The air burned with the sharp tang of scorched metal as Jake's shuttle groaned to a halt on the alien planet. Smoke curled from its hull, twisting into the violet sky where two moons hung like mismatched eyes. Jake, a rugged astronaut with a lean frame and eyes bright with curiosity, stepped out onto the cracked, glassy ground. His boots crunched against the alien soil, and he scanned the horizon. Towering spires of shimmering metal rose in the distance, catching the moonlight in a dance of silver and shadow. This wasn't Earth. This was something else entirely. A low hum vibrated through the air, and Jake turned to see a figure approaching. She moved with the grace of a predator, her silhouette sharp against the glowing city. Nuhuangzara, ruler of this world, stopped a few paces away. Her skin glimmered like polished pearl under the moonlight, and her eyes, deep, endless pools of amber, locked onto his. Her voice, smooth as a symphony, cut through the silence. "Welcome, traveler from the stars." Jake's breath caught. She was stunning, otherworldly like a statue carved from light. She stepped closer and placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture that felt too warm, too deliberate. His face flushed, mistaking it for intimacy. Back on Earth, a touch like that meant something. Here it was just their way of saying hello. He cleared his throat, trying to shake off the heat creeping up his neck. "Name's Jake. Didn't expect a royal welcome." Zara's lips curled, a smile that was both inviting and unreadable. "Your vessel," she said, glancing at the smoking shuttle. "It's remarkable. How does it cross the void?" Her tone was casual, but her eyes gleamed with a hunger that made Jake pause. He shrugged, keeping it vague. "It's just a pile of bolts and wires. Gets me from point A to point B." She tilted her head, studying him like a puzzle. Jake felt the weight of her gaze, like a blade tracing his skin. He didn't know their customs, didn't know if he was supposed to bow or salute, or just keep talking. The air between them crackled, a mix of curiosity and something heavier, unspoken. Zara stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. "You must be weary," she said, her voice dropping to a velvet whisper. "Tonight, I host a private gathering at my palace. Join me. Let us learn of your kind." Jake's pulse quickened. He knew he should be cautious. This wasn't his world, and she wasn't just anyone. But her smile, her voice, the way she moved, it pulled him in like gravity. "Lead the way," he said, his eyes never leaving her. Zara turned, her cloak sweeping behind her, and Jake followed, his boots echoing on the alien stone as they headed toward the glowing spires of her palace. Jake stepped into the palace garden, where the air shimmered with the scent of alien blooms and the glow of two moons casting silver light through crystalline trees. The scene was a fever dream. Tables laden with glowing fruits, music like liquid starlight, and Zara, radiant in a flowing gown that caught the moonlight like a second skin. She glided toward him, her smile a blade wrapped in silk. "You're late, Earthmen," she teased, her voice curling around him like smoke. They walked together through the garden, her words painting vivid tales of their people's ancient rituals. Jake tried to focus, but her presence was a distraction. Every glance, every brush of her fingers against his arm sent his pulse racing. She paused by a fountain, its water sparkling like molten glass, and turned to him. "Your ship," she said, her tone soft but probing. "Its power source. What fuels it?" Her amber eyes locked onto his, sharp as a laser. Jake grinned, sidestepping the question. "Just some fancy batteries. Nothing special." He wasn't stupid. Her curiosity felt two-pointed, like a hunter sizing up prey. But when she leaned closer, her breath warm against his cheek, his guard wavered. He thought her closeness was a sign, a spark of something real. On Earth, this would mean something. Here, he wasn't so sure. Zara's fingers traced his wrist, her touch electric. "You're different," she murmured, her voice a low hum that drowned out the music. Before he could respond, she pulled him into a sudden, searing kiss. Her lips were fire, bold and unyielding, and Jake's heart roared like a rocket engine. For a moment, he was lost in her, until her eyes flicked to the shadows. A signal. Cold metal clamped around his wrists. Jake jerked back, but guards emerged from the darkness, their grip like iron. "Zara, what the hell?" he shouted, struggling as they dragged him back. Her face was a mask, cold and unreadable as she turned away. The garden's glow faded behind him as the guards hauled him through a stone archway, down into the depths of the palace. The guards dragged Jake through a maze of stone corridors, their boots echoing like thunder in the dim, cold depths of the palace. His wrist burned under the bite of metal cuffs, but his mind burned hotter. Zara's kiss still lingered on his lips, now poisoned by her betrayal. The lush garden, her warm touch, her whispered words, it was all a lie. The thought cut deeper than the chains. They shoved him into a high-tech cell, its walls pulsing with a sickly green glow. The air was thick, heavy with the hum of alien machinery. Jake stumbled but caught himself, standing tall despite the restraints. His eyes, sharp as steel, scanned the room for any weakness. A crack, a loose panel, anything. He wasn't done yet. Zara appeared at the cell's entrance, her silhouette framed by the eerie light. Gone was the seductive queen from the garden. Now she was all ice, her amber eyes cold, her voice sharp as a blade. "You humans are so predictable," she said, stepping closer, "so easily swayed by a smile." She tilted her head, her pearl-like skin catching the glow. "Your technology, Jake. I need it. My rivals in the council grow bold, and your ship's power could secure my throne."
Jake clenched his jaw, the sting of her words matching the ache in his chest. "You played me," he said, his voice low, steady. "Thought that kiss meant something. Guess I forgot. Your kind doesn't play by Earth rules." His sarcasm hid the hurt, but his defiance shone through. He wouldn't break, not for her. Zaran's lips twitched, almost a smirk. "Naive, but stubborn. I underestimated you." She waved a hand and a guard stepped forward, adjusting a device on the wall that hummed louder, tightening Jake's cuffs. "We'll break that stubbornness soon enough." She turned to leave, her cloak sweeping like a storm cloud. "Prepare him for questioning," she ordered the guard, her voice fading as she vanished down the corridor. Jake sank against the wall, the green light casting shadows across his face. His heart pounded, not with fear, but with resolve. He'd been betrayed before. Earth wasn't exactly a paradise, but he'd be damned if he let Zara win. He flexed his wrists, testing the cuffs, already searching for a way out. The cell's green glow pulsed like a dying heartbeat, casting jagged shadows across the stone floor. Jake sat chained to a metal chair, its cold surface biting into his back. His wrists ached under the cuffs, but his eyes burned with defiance, locked on the door as it hissed open. Zara stepped in, her presence filling the small room like a storm. Her pearl-like skin shimmered under the harsh light, but her amber eyes were sharp, predatory, slicing through him like a laser. She circled him slowly, her cloak whispering against the floor. "You're tougher than you look, Earthman," she said, her voice smooth but edged with steel. She leaned in close, her fingers brushing his cheek, light as a feather but heavy with intent. The touch sent a jolt through Jake, stirring memories of her kiss in the garden, a kiss now laced with betrayal. "Tell me about your ship's core," she murmured, her breath warm against his ear. "Its power could save my people. Or," she straightened, her tone hardening, "I'll tear it apart piece by piece." Jake's jaw tightened, his heart a war drum in his chest. Part of him wanted to believe her, to fall for that velvet voice again, but he wasn't that naive kid from Earth anymore. "You're good, Zara," he said, his voice rough but steady, a smirk tugging at his lips. "That whole damsel in distress act almost had me, but I'm not handing you my tech so you can play galactic dictator." His words were a jab, sharp and deliberate, hiding the sting of her betrayal. Zara's eyes flashed, a flicker of irritation breaking her icy calm. She stepped back, crossing her arms. "Stubborn fool," she snapped. "You think you can defy me?" She gestured to a guard, who activated a device on the wall. The cuffs tightened, sending a pulse of pain through Jake's arms. He gritted his teeth, refusing to flinch. "Last chance, Jake," she said, leaning in again, her face inches from his. "Give me what I want, or you'll regret it." Before he could fire back, a deafening boom shook the room. The walls trembled, dust raining from the ceiling. Zara stumbled, catching herself on the chair. Her eyes widened, the first crack in her composure. "What was that?" she hissed, glancing at the guard. Another explosion roared, closer this time, and the cell's green light flickered wildly. Zara spun toward the door, her cloak flaring as she rushed out to investigate, barking orders at the guard. "Stay with him!" The door slammed shut, but the tremors didn't stop. A sharp crack split the air, and a jagged fracture snaked across the cell's wall, loosening Jake's cuffs just enough. His eyes narrowed, adrenaline surging. Whatever was happening out there, it was his chance. Chaos erupted as the cell's wall crumbled under another bone-rattling explosion. Dust and debris choked the air, stinging Jake's eyes as he yanked at his cuffs, now loose from the fractured stone. The green glow of the prison flickered, plunging the room into bursts of shadow and light. Through the jagged crack in the wall, Jake glimpsed the city beyond, a nightmare of fire and ruin. Towering machines, their metal limbs gleaming like death itself, marched through the streets, firing beams of searing energy that turned spires to molten slag. Screams pierced the air, sharp and desperate, as Zara's people fled in panic. The machines, ancient mechanical monsters, moved with relentless precision, their whirring gears drowning out the cries below. No one fought back. Zara's guards, those same ones who dragged him here, were nowhere to be seen, likely scattered or dead. The city was a slaughterhouse, and Jake was still chained, a sitting duck in the middle of it. Another blast rocked the prison, closer this time. The wall split wide open, and Jake's cuffs snapped free, clattering to the floor. He staggered to his feet, coughing through the smoke, his muscles screaming from hours in chains. The crack in the wall was now a gaping hole, revealing a sky choked with crimson flames and the distant wail of collapsing towers. He could run, slip through the chaos, find his ship and get the hell off this planet. But the sight of a child's trembling form, half buried under debris, stopped him cold. Jake's breath hitched. Zara's betrayal burned in his chest, but these people, their fear, their pain, weren't her. They were just caught in the crossfire, like he'd been back on Earth during the resource wars. He clenched his fists, his resolve hardening like steel. No way was he letting them to die. He stepped toward the hole, dodging a falling chunk of stone, and climbed through, his boots hitting the shattered ground outside. The city's chaos swallowed him, but his eyes were sharp, scanning for a way to fight back.
Jake stumbled into the shattered streets, the air thick with ash and the screech of metal. His boots skidded on broken glass as he ducked behind a crumbled pillar, dodging a searing beam from one of the towering machines. The city was a war zone. Crimson skies bled fire, and the ground shook with every step of the mechanical beasts. Their glowing eyes scanned the ruins, hunting anything that moved. Jake's muscles burned from the prison's chains, but adrenaline kept him sharp, his senses dialed to survival mode. He gripped a jagged metal rod he'd pried from the rubble, its weight crude but solid in his hands. A smaller machine, spider-like with clicking legs, scuttled toward him, its sensors flashing. Jake hurled a chunk of debris, striking its core. The machine sparked and veered off, crashing into a wall. He didn't wait to see if it recovered. He sprinted through a collapsing alley, weaving past panicked guards who barely noticed him in the chaos, their shouts drowned under the roar of explosions, their discipline shattered by fear. The alley opened to a plaza, and Jake froze. Before him was a sea of Zara's people, men, women, children, their glowing skin dulled by dust and terror. They huddled behind overturned carts, their eyes wide, pleading for salvation. A woman clutched a crying child, her arm bleeding from a gash. Jake's chest tightened. He could keep running, find his ship, and leave this cursed planet behind. Freedom was so close. But those eyes, desperate, human in their own alien way, pinned him in place. He cursed under his breath.
Zara's betrayal still a knife in his gut. But he wasn't her. He wasn't the type to abandon people in need, not after surviving Earth's own hells. Jake tightened his grip on the metal rod, his jaw set. He stepped forward, toward the crowd, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Hey!" he shouted, loud enough to turn heads. "You want to live? Follow me!" His words were a spark, and the crowd's eyes flickered with hope. He moved toward them, ready to lead, knowing there was no turning back now. The plaza was a graveyard of shattered dreams, littered with twisted metal and smoldering rubble. Jake stood at its heart, the crimson sky roaring above, his metal rod still clutched tight. The crowd of aliens, Zara's people, pressed closer, their glowing skin pulsing faintly, a sign of life amidst the ash-choked air. The distant roar of the mechanical beasts echoed, a grim reminder of the death closing in. Jake's gaze fell on a small child, no older than 6, sobbing beside a woman slumped against a broken wall. Her arm was torn, blood like liquid silver pooling beneath her. The child's cries cut through Jake's chest, sharper than Zara's betrayal. He could still feel the sting of her kiss, her lies. But this was different. These people weren't his enemy. They were just scared, broken like he'd been during Earth's darkest days. He dropped to one knee, setting the rod down to lift the woman gently. Her eyes fluttered, pain etched in every line of her face. "Stay with me," Jake said, his voice steady, anchoring her. He tore a strip from his jacket, binding her wound tight. The child clung to his leg, trembling but quiet now. Jake looked up at the crowd, their silence heavy, waiting. He stood, raising his voice like a beacon. "We're not dying here. Grab anything, sticks, rocks, anything you can fight with. We save ourselves." The words ignited something. A man snatched a metal pipe from the debris. A woman hefted a jagged stone, her jaw set. Whispers spread, then shouts, as hope flickered through the crowd like a spark catching dry grass. Jake pointed to a narrow street leading to a cluster of intact buildings. "Move, we'll hold up there," he ordered, scooping the child into his arms and supporting the woman. The crowd surged behind him, their footsteps a defiant drumbeat against the chaos. As they reached the safer ground, Jake set the child down, his heart pounding with purpose. He wasn't just running anymore. He was leading, and he'd be damned if he let these people fall. The cluster of battered buildings loomed like broken teeth against the crimson sky, their walls scarred but standing. Jake stood on a makeshift platform of crumbled stone. The crowd of aliens, Zara's people, gathered below, clutching pipes, rocks, and shards of metal. Their glowing skin pulsed faintly, a sign of life amidst the ash-choked air. The distant roar of the mechanical beasts echoed, a countdown to their next attack. Jake's heart raced, but his voice was steel, cutting through the fear. "Listen up," he shouted, his words sharp as a whip. "Those machines want us dead, but we're not going down without a fight." He scanned the crowd, meeting their eyes, some terrified, some defiant. "We're building a resistance, right here, right now." Jake's military training kicked in, his mind a map of strategy forged in Earth's wars. He pointed to a burly alien with a scarred face. "You, lead a group to pile debris for barricades, block the main street." The man nodded, rallying others. He turned to a wiry woman, clutching a jagged blade. "Take 10 people. Scour the ruins for anything sharp or heavy, weapons, tools, anything." She darted off, purpose in her step. He crouched by a toppled machine, its gears silent but glowing faintly at its core. He pried it open with his metal rod, exposing a pulsing energy crystal. His eyes narrowed, same tech as his ship's core. "They've got a weak spot," he muttered, standing. He called over a young alien who'd been tinkering with scraps. "These machines run on central cores. Hit that. They drop. Can you spread the word?" The kid's eyes lit up, nodding fiercely. From a distant rooftop, Zara watched, her cloak billowing in the smoky wind. Her amber eyes widened, a flicker of shock breaking her regal mask. This human, her prisoner, was rallying her people, her failures, into a force she'd never mustered. Her fists clenched, torn between awe and anger. The ground trembled as the machine's hum grew louder, their shadows creeping closer. Jake climbed the barricade, rod in hand, his voice a battle cry. "Get ready! They're coming!" The crowd tensed, their makeshift weapons raised, united under an Earthman's command. The barricades trembled under the weight of the approaching machines, their metal claws scraping the shattered street like knives on bone. Jake crouched behind a pile of debris, his metal rods slick with sweat in his grip. The crimson sky pulsed with fire, casting eerie shadows over the crowd of aliens, Zara's people, clutching their makeshift weapons. Their glowing skin flickered, a mix of fear and defiance. The air crackled with tension, thick with the screech of the enemy's spears.
Jake's eyes locked on a group of smaller machines, spider-like, with glowing cores, scuttling toward them. "Now," he roared, thrusting his rod skyward. A team of aliens sprang from the shadows, hurling rocks to lure the machines into a narrow alley. The trap worked. One machine stumbled, its legs tangled in debris. Jake leaped forward, slamming his rod into its core. Sparks erupted, and the machine collapsed, its hum fading to silence. The crowd cheered, a raw, desperate sound, but Jake's jaw tightened. More machines were coming, their sensors flashing like predator eyes. He barked orders, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Flank them! Hit the cores!" A burly alien swung a pipe, smashing another machine's core, while a woman darted in, stabbing a shard of metal into a third. Each victory was a spark, fueling their courage. But the enemy was relentless. A larger machine loomed, its beam slicing through a barricade, sending aliens scrambling. Jake's heart pounded. There were too many, too strong. He grabbed a young alien, the Tinkerer from before, who clutched a stolen energy crystal. "Can you rig this to blow?" Jake asked, voice urgent. The kid nodded, hand shaking but quick, wiring the crystal to a chunk of rubble. Jake hurled the makeshift bomb, and it detonated in a blinding flash, toppling two machines. The crowd roared, but Jake's eyes were grim. "Fall back," he shouted, waving them toward the buildings. "We can't hold them here." They retreated, dragging the wounded, their small victory bitter against the enemy's overwhelming might. The machines paused, regrouping, but Jake knew they'd return with greater force. He clenched his rod, mind racing with plans for the fight ahead. The city burned under a crimson sky, its spires reduced to glowing embers. Jake stood atop a crumbling rooftop, his metal rod scarred from battle, his jacket torn and bloodied. Below, Zara's people, now his army, crouched behind barricades, their glowing skin dim but defiant. The ancient machines swarmed, a tidal wave of steel and fire, their central hub pulsing like a heart in the distance. Jake's eyes locked on it, their one shot at victory. "Hit the hub!" he shouted, raw but commanding. He leaped down, leading the charge through a storm of beams. The air screamed with energy, singeing his skin as he dodged a claw that shattered the ground. A burly alien fell beside him, struck by a beam, his pipe clattering away. Jake's chest tightened, but he pressed on, shouting, "Keep moving! For your families!" The crowd surged, fueled by his fire. Jake's plan was desperate. Draw the machines away. Let the Tinkerer rig the hub's cord to explode. He waved a team to flank left, hurling rocks to distract a towering machine. It turned, and Jake sprinted right, his boots pounding rubble. A spider-like bot lunged. He swung his rod, cracking its core. Sparks flew and it collapsed, but another took its place, relentless. The Tinkerer reached the hub, wiring stolen crystals with trembling hands. Jake fought to buy time, his arms burning, each swing slower than the last. A beam grazed his shoulder, pain searing like a brand, but he roared, "Not yet!" An alien woman dragged him behind cover, her eyes fierce. "You don't die here, human," she hissed, shoving a jagged blade into his hand. The hub's core glowed brighter, unstable. "Now!" the Tinkerer yelled. Jake signaled retreat, but a machine blocked their path, its claws raised. With a final surge, Jake plunged the blade into its core.
It shuddered, collapsing, as the hub detonated, a blinding blast that shook the earth. Machines fell silent, their lights fading. Jake staggered to his feet, blood and ash streaking his face. The battlefield was still, save for the crackle of dying fires. From the smoke, Zara emerged, her cloak tattered, her amber eyes unreadable. She stopped, staring at the human who'd saved her world. The battlefield was a wasteland, scorched and silent under a crimson sky. Jake stood amidst the ruins, his metal rod dropped, his body bruised and bloodied. Smoke curled around him, stinging his eyes, but his stance was unbroken, a lone pillar in the wreckage. Zara's people gathered behind, their glowing skin faint but warm, whispering gratitude. The crackle of dying fires filled the air, a fragile peace after the storm. Zara stepped through the haze, her tattered cloak dragging over ash. Her pearl-like skin caught the fading light, but her amber eyes, once cold, calculating, were raw, shimmering with tears. She stopped a few feet from Jake, her hands trembling. "Jake," she said, her voice a whisper, sharp with shame. "I was blind." She sank to her knees, the proud queen humbled, her crown glinting dully in the rubble. "Power twisted me. I betrayed you, and them." Her gaze flicked to her people, heavy with regret. Jake's chest tightened. Her kiss? Her lies? They still lingered. A wound as real as the burn on her shoulder. But her tears, her brokenness, stirred something deeper. He'd seen despair like this on Earth, in soldiers who'd lost their way. He stepped forward, his boots crunching ash, and knelt before her, eye to eye. "You messed up, Zara," he said, voice low, rough with truth. "But you're not your mistakes." His words were a lifeline, not a judgment. He offered his hand, scarred and steady. Zara hesitated, her fingers hovering, then grasped his, her grip fierce as a star's pull. He pulled her to her feet, their touch electric, a silent vow. Her eyes searched his, a storm of guilt and hope. "Why forgive me?" she murmured, voice cracking. Jake's lips twitched, a tired smile. "Because someone's gotta believe in second chances." He released her hand, stepping back, his gaze sweeping the shattered city. "This place needs rebuilding. So do you." They stood side by side, the weight of their past hanging between them. The horizon glowed faintly, a promise of dawn. Zara's hand brushed his, hesitant, a question unspoken. Jake didn't pull away, leaving the future unwritten, theirs to shape or imagine.